This is ouiTravel demo number 2. So I just wanted to include a quick summary on everything we've progressed on since demo 1, just for ease of understanding. Some key features we've integrated since then is a friend system allowing you to add and remove friends. We also implemented creating and modifying trips, a collaborative trip planning system that you can add and remove friends to your trips, a social media and post history allowing you to see an explore page of trips that your friends have taken or similar trips to ones you've taken. We also included a trip and payment history, and there's also a list of external APIs that we integrated for this demo.
In this video, we're gonna demonstrate how friend system works. So we have three big functions. One's friend request, one's friend accept, and one's friend remove. So from the back end of our code, we check if the user's adding itself, him or herself as a friend, and if it tries to do it, we will reject the request. If the user's trying to add a friend that has not been registered in the website, meaning it's not inside our database, it will also reject. And if friend is already a friend, or status friend, then it will reject since we're already a friends. For friend accept, we're just accepting a friend, for other user as a friend. And friend remove, we're just going to delete the friends from friend list and cancel the friend request that has been sent, or decline the friend request that has been received. So this is since our server can handle multiple clients, we're just going to pull each friends, and I'll first show if I try to add myself, the code will send a request saying cannot add yourself. But if we try the same thing from the other account, now it will be successfully, the friend request successfully sent to the email that I just typed in. So then it displays the sent request to the specific email that I plugged in. Now, if we refresh this page, now the receive request, it successfully received the request from the other user. Now if we accept this, it will tell friend request accepted, and it will move to the friends list. Now if you refresh this page, since it's accepted, we're now friends. But if for some reason the other user decides to remove the friends, it will tell successfully removed and removes from the friend list. And if we refresh this page, it will also remove the user from the friends list. Now let's say if I type in the wrong username or account, it says user does not exist, meaning this would have to be an exact email that you're trying to send, exactly match the email that has been stored inside our database to send the friend request or to accept. Now if we send in another friend request, and instead of accepting, now we're declining, it will say successfully removed. Now it's gone. And if we refresh this, the send request is empty now since we declined it. And the last case is if we try to send it again, it displays in the friends list. And it's, for some reason now you wanna delete the sent request and just press cancel. Now it's gone. Same thing happens here. The received request is gone. So this is our friend system.
Next up, we're going to demonstrate the dashboard and trip creation process. The dashboard is the page the user sees when they first log in, and the dashboard contains individual cards for each trip that they have joined. The cards are populated with basic information regarding each trip, and they're given a status of expired, pending, or paid, depending on whether or not they have been finalized and paid, and when their trip start date is. So you can showcase that really quickly. Here are our cards for the many trips that we are in. As you can see, we indicate whether the trip is pending, expired, or paid on the top right. And if the trip has been assigned a flight and a hotel, these boxes will be checked. And the activities are indicated by a number, which shows how many activities have been assigned to this trip. And as you can see, basic information such as the start date, end date, the amount of people on the trip, and the trip creator are also displayed here. And if we were to go into these trips, you can see that they are fully fleshed out with location, hotels, activities. But one thing to note is that pending trips are still editable, as you can see here with these plus buttons and the X's, whereas a paid trip no longer has any of these buttons since everything has been finalized and paid for. So next we can go over the trip creation process. The user just has to click on this plus button here and they can search for a destination. So let's go for Paris, since that is a very popular city. Let's make a quick edit here. As you can see, every time we change the keyword in our search bar, it sends a request to our backend, which is connected, which sends another request to Amadeus to get our data. And each one of these options are returned as a result of this fetch request. And the reason we chose Amadeus is because it provides the city code here, which is very useful for helping us find flights, hotels, and activities later on in the trip. So when you select this option, it saves the city code and the city name to our trip, and the user is also then prompted to select a start date and end date and whether or not they want the trip to be visible for their friends to see. So let's click the create trip button, and as you can see, a new trip is added to the end of our dashboard. Next, let's demonstrate the average user flow for our program. So after the user logs in and sees the dashboard, they would most likely be greeted with an empty trips page if they haven't made any trip. So the first thing they would do is make a trip like before. Let's choose London this time because it is one of the more fleshed out trips in terms of the Amadeus API, which we are going to look at later on. And we are going to create this trip. And so the first thing you're greeted with is a start date and end date, which we have set earlier. And these can be changed as to the user's liking, and it will be reflected in the flights, hotels, and activity search later on with the correct start date and end date. Next up is our party. So we can actually add collaborators to our trip, in this case, dduck@gmail.com. And the list of users that show up is based solely on your friends list. So as you can see, we have him added. But if we were to, actually, let's first demonstrate what it looks like from his perspective. So we could log in as Donald. I've done that before. And if we were to go in, we would see that in this trip, I was the original creator and he is one of the participants. And he could actually add another collaborator here. And if we were to refresh on our original, it would show up. In addition, if we were to remove Donald Duck and remove him as a friend as well, he would no longer show up, or nobody will show up since our friend list is now empty. So next we can move on to the flights, hotels, and activities display. These are all powered by the Amadeus API. They function by utilizing the city code which we have entered earlier, or which we have fetched earlier from the Amadeus API to find flights, hotels, and activities. So if we were to select a flight, let's restart this. If we were to select a flight, it would send out a call to our backend with the origin city code, destination city code, departure date, and arrival date. The departure date and arrival date should, or the departure date and return date should reflect that which we have set earlier in the trip. And it will provide a variety of airlines and different prices and times for the user to select from. And this user can also choose to select a different travel class, such as premium economy or first class. And it will reload the list of offers to reflect your selection. So after we click on it, it will be added to our trip, and this is done by first creating a flight object with the information we had just gotten from Amadeus. So anything that is displayed in these lists are actually in our backend and not on Amadeus's website. And this is so that if anything happens to the API or for some reason we can't fetch these items anymore, we can still see them from our backend or from our database. And then, so once we create this flight object, we then associate it to the trip through this request. And the same thing can be done for hotels and activities. So for hotels, we also have a check-in and check-out date and a number of rooms. And for each hotel location, we have many different offers. These offers are all described by the description here. So let's pick 2 twins. And next, we can select an activity. Most of these are free, but they all each have their own description, and if available, they have a rating. As you can see, any hotel and activities we add are reflected on our Google Maps, and this is possible because in addition to the name, dates, room numbers, descriptions, all that information, hotels and activities also have a location ID, or not location ID, they also have coordinates embedded in the object from the Amadeus API, which we can then use to show the location of these hotels and activities on the map. And the map is dynamic, so if you were to remove an activity, it would remove it from the map. So next, Jin is going to demonstrate how we use our PayPal API to pay for the trip, and we will continue from there.
For this demo, we've implemented the PayPal API to do our payment processing. I'll show you how we pay with PayPal, pay with credit card, and how on payment approval, we change the trip status to paid. So if you try to go to this trip that I've made, the total is right here for the trip. And if you try to pay with PayPal, we'll log in with a test account. And we see that we send the price to the PayPal API, so that shows up right here. And then before I complete the purchase, I'll just show you the MongoDB side by side. So right now it's this trip, it is pending. And then once we complete the purchase, it's been paid, transaction completed. And then if we refresh, go back to that trip, you see that the status is now set to paid. And then also on our website, you can no longer have the pay button and the delete button since you've already paid for it. And then I'll quickly show you the credit card payment processing as well. For this trip, if you click the credit card button right here, you can generate a card through the PayPal developer dashboard. In these values and prepay now. Don't want to save it, and we see that transaction is completed. And then we see the same stuff happen.
So for the social media subsystem, we have about 3 kind of key components. So the first is my post. So the functionality that this includes, you could create a post which has a caption and an image, and each post is associated with a given trip ID. You can also delete any of your own posts, view your own posts, and then view or make a comment on a post. You can also view the trip information, which is associated with each post. So the Explorer and Friends have similar functionalities. Explorer will filter other users' posts by the trip location. So a user can select a location from a drop-down menu, and it'll return all the posts with that that has a trip with that location ID. This all has the same functionality with the comments, viewing info. Then Friends, similarly, it filters the post this time by only users' friends. So moving on into the demo. So this is what the My Posts page looks like. So to create a post, you just click this button, demo post, and then you can choose an image, and then select a trip from this dropdown, so it'll pull all of your trips that you have. Then you get a message that your post has been created, and you're able to see it here. So the way this looks in the database, as you could see, demo post, this is the post that we just created, to note that the image is stored in binary data here. Go back. So as I mentioned before, you can view the trip info, so the hotel, the flight, the activities, the dates and the location and everything here. You can also see comments on your post or add your own comment to other people's as well. As you see, that's just been reflected. So for the explore page, so first it'll show all posts existing in the database, as you can see here. So these all have the same functionalities. You can view the trip info, as you see here, there's activities, look at comments, add comments, and then here is a drop-down menu of all of the different locations. So if you pick a location, you'll get the trips with that. And then if you pick a location that doesn't have any associated trips, you get a message that there are not any posts yet. Lastly, we have friends. So these are going to be all exclusive to friends. So all of these accounts are my friends, and it has the same functionality. Again, as I said, you could view the trip info or make a comment. So that concludes the portion for the social media subsystem.
All right, so this is the history system. So the history system's front end consists of the payment history drop-down menu option. This incorporates any trip with a paid status. You can sort in ascending or descending order, and it's based on the creator name, destination, start date, or price. We also have a trip history page labeled history on the front end. You'll see it on the app in a second. This is where you can view a more detailed payment breakdown of any trip. We created a pie chart to show how a user has spent their things, like such as hotels, flights, and activities. And it'll also show any photos associated with the trip. So if we go to the app and we look at some of these trips, right now I have 5 paid trips. And if I were to go to the payment history page, it'll show all the trips in chronological order. It initially does nothing as a default. And if I wanted to, I could sort in ascending by start date. So this will show the most recent start date. And if I unclick it, it'll show it now in the order with the earliest start date. Same thing for price. If I click on it, it'll show the most expensive. If I unclick on it, it shows the least expensive. Destination shows furthest down the alphabet, furthest up. There's also these buttons. After 5 trips are inside of a page, it'll automatically go to the next page. Then we can go to history of the things that have been paid for. There are 6 paid for trips on mine, not 5 actually. If you wanted to view the trip info, let's say for New York City, it'll show only a pie chart of things that you've paid for. So I've paid $684 and it's only been on hotels and flights, and activities. It shows when you hover over it how much you spent on each. And if I were to, for instance, go to my post and create a post for New York City, let's say I choose a photo. Let's just say I take this photo of New York City and I say the New York City trip and I submit it and I create the post. And then I go back to history and I go New York. Under it, it'll now say photos from the trip and it'll show this photo. Additionally, if I go back to my post and I create another post for the same exact trip, call this one MSG, and I select the same trip and I submit it and it creates it, and I go back, it'll show this second trip. Now, another thing to note is that if a trip is pending, it'll not show up. So we have Seattle and San Francisco, these two. If you go to history, you can see the Seattle. This is the 4/31, not the June one, and there's no San Francisco. If I were to, for instance, pay for Seattle and I add a flight or something, and I just check this out and pay for the flight, once I complete this purchase, the status will be updated to paid. It says transaction complete by John because that's just the name of our default account. Now it's paid. So if we go back to history, we now have the Seattle trip info and it only shows flights.